Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something really important that could save you months or even years of heartache and frustration. We're talking about those subtle red flags in men that often go unnoticed until it's too late. Now, I'm not here to man bash or create division. This is about empowerment through awareness. Sigma females, those independent, confident women who march to their own beat, have developed a keen sense for noticing certain behaviors early on because they've learned to trust their intuition and set healthy boundaries without seeking external validation. So whether you're currently dating, in a relationship, or taking time for yourself, these insights might help you navigate future relationships with more clarity and confidence. Before we jump in, remember to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss out on new content focused on personal growth and healthy relationships. Now let's get into these 7 subtle but serious red flags that only Sigma females tend to catch early, while others might miss them completely. Red flag number 1, value inconsistency. The first red flag is what I call value inconsistency. This isn't about obvious lies or contradictions. It's much more subtle. When a highly perceptive woman meets someone new, she's not just listening to what they say, she's watching what they do, especially when they think no one is paying attention. She notices the small moments that reveal character. For example, a man might talk about how much he values honesty and integrity, but then you catch him telling small, unnecessary lies to others, maybe exaggerating a story to impress someone, or taking credit for work that wasn't entirely his. Another example is someone who claims to be very respectful toward women, but you notice he speaks differently about women when he's with his friends or makes dismissive comments about female colleagues. What makes this red flag so dangerous is that these inconsistencies often appear minor in isolation. He's not necessarily doing anything that crosses a major boundary, but these small disconnects between words and actions point to a more significant pattern. Consider a man who constantly talks about valuing family above all else. Yet whenever his parents call, he ignores them or complains about how annoying they are after hanging up. This pattern typically extends to how he treats all long-term relationships in his life, but it might take months to recognize this broader pattern. Highly perceptive women catch these disconnects early because they understand that character is revealed in the small, everyday choices, not just in the big moments. Red flag number 2, emotional camouflage. The second red flag is what I call emotional camouflage, when someone presents emotions that don't quite match the situation. Most people focus on spotting negative emotions like anger or jealousy, but perceptive women notice something more subtle, when positive emotions seem performative rather than genuine. It's the difference between authentic joy and what I call strategic charm. For instance, have you ever noticed someone being exceptionally charismatic and attentive, but something feels just slightly off? Maybe they laugh a little too enthusiastically at jokes, or their compliments sound rehearsed rather than spontaneous. This isn't about someone having a good mood or being naturally charming. It's about noticing when emotional responses seem calculated to achieve a specific outcome rather than reflecting genuine feelings. Perceptive women notice this because they're tuned into emotional coherence. Whether someone's expressions, body language, and words all tell the same story. They also notice when this charm gets switched on and off depending on who's in the room. Is he charismatic with your friends but dismissive with the server? Magnetic in group settings but emotionally flat when you're alone? This camouflage often hides emotional unavailability or manipulation. The person has learned that displaying certain emotions gets them what they want, but they're not actually connecting from an authentic place. What makes this especially difficult to spot is that most of us want to believe the positive emotions directed toward us. We want that charm and attention to be real, which is why many people miss this red flag until they're already emotionally invested. Red flag number 3, selective accountability. The third red flag is selective accountability, and this one is particularly tricky because it often masquerades as honesty. This person seems to take responsibility and even apologize when they make mistakes, which initially looks like emotional maturity. But perceptive women notice a pattern. These accountability moments are inconsistent and ultimately don't lead to any actual change in behavior. Here's what it looks like. He apologizes genuinely when he disappoints you, but the exact same situation happens again a week later. Or he takes responsibility for his part in a conflict, but somehow the conversation still ends with you feeling like you're the one who needs to change. What's happening here is that he's learned the language of accountability without embracing the actual practice of it. The apology or acknowledgement becomes a tool to move past the conflict quickly rather than address the underlying issue. For example, he might say, "You're right, I should have called when I was running late. That was inconsiderate of me." That sounds great. But then the pattern continues, and when you bring it up again, he says, "I already acknowledge that I mess up sometimes with timing. You're being too demanding." The selective accountability person uses instances of seeming responsibility to shield themselves from deeper change or more difficult conversations. Perceptive women notice this pattern because they track actions over time, not just words in the moment. They observe whether accountability actually leads to behavioral shifts or if it's just a temporary performance to maintain relationship peace. This red flag is particularly important because relationships require genuine accountability from both partners to grow and thrive. Without it, you'll find yourself having the same conflicts over and over again. Red flag number 4, contextual respect. The fourth red flag is what I call contextual respect. When someone's level of respect for others fluctuates dramatically depending on the context or who they're interacting with. Most people understand the obvious version of this. Someone who's nice to you but rude to wait staff probably isn't actually nice. But perceptive women notice more subtle variations of this pattern. They notice when a man respects women he's attracted to, but speaks dismissively about women he's not interested in. They catch when he listens attentively to men or authority figures, but subtly interrupts or speaks over women or people he considers beneath him. It's not always about obvious disrespect like rudeness or insults. Sometimes it's about the degree of engagement, attention, and consideration given to different people in different contexts. For example, does he truly listen when people without power or status are speaking? Does he extend empathy to those who can offer him nothing in return? Does he remember details about people who aren't central to his social circle or ambitions? Perceptive women catch these patterns because they understand that true respect isn't conditional. It's a core value that remains relatively stable across contexts. They recognize that how someone treats others when there's no benefit to them reveals who they'll eventually be in the relationship once the initial phase has passed. This red flag matters because relationships eventually move beyond the courtship phase, and the special treatment you initially receive will likely regress to how they treat people in general. If that baseline level of respect is low or inconsistent, your relationship will eventually reflect that reality. Red flag number 5, boundary testing. The fifth and final red flag is boundary testing. Subtle ways someone might test or push against your boundaries to see what they can get away with. This isn't about the obvious boundary violations that most people would immediately recognize. It's about small, seemingly insignificant moments that perceptive women notice because they understand that boundaries are crossed incrementally, not all at once. Some examples include making jokes at your expense and calling you too sensitive if you don't laugh along, borrowing small items without asking and acting surprised when you mention it, planning your time together without consulting you, making small decisions on your behalf, creating situations where saying no would make you seem difficult or unappreciative, sharing information about you that you told them privately, testing what they can disclose. The boundary tester isn't necessarily malicious. Sometimes they've simply grown up without healthy boundaries themselves and don't recognize what they're doing. Other times they're consciously seeing how flexible your boundaries are. What makes this red flag difficult to spot is that each individual instance seems minor and not worth making a fuss over. But perceptive women notice these patterns early because they understand that respect for boundaries is fundamental to healthy relationships. They also recognize that how someone responds when you reinforce a boundary tells you everything. Does he apologize and adjust his behavior? Or does he try to convince you that your boundary is unreasonable? Does he remember the boundary next time? Or does he forget repeatedly? This red flag matters because boundaries protect what matters to you: your time, emotional energy, values, and sense of self. A relationship with someone who consistently tests or ignores boundaries will gradually erode your well-being and autonomy. Red flag number 6, strategic vulnerability. The sixth red flag is what I call strategic vulnerability, a pattern where someone shares personal struggles or emotional pain in ways that seem calculated rather than authentic. Sigma females are particularly attuned to this red flag because they understand the difference between genuine vulnerability and vulnerability as a strategy. They value authenticity in themselves and others, so they notice when emotional sharing feels performative. Here's what it looks like. He shares deeply personal stories very early in knowing you, often without appropriate context. These revelations create an artificial sense of intimacy and often position him as either a victim deserving sympathy or a hero who's overcome great obstacles. What makes this tricky is that vulnerability is generally positive in relationships. We do want partners who can share their struggles and emotions. The difference is in the timing, context, and what happens after the sharing. Strategic vulnerability often follows a pattern. The emotional sharing leads to you feeling responsible for his feelings or obligated to reciprocate with your own vulnerability before trust is established. It may also be used to excuse concerning behavior. I only get jealous because my ex cheated on me. Sigma females notice this pattern because they're comfortable with genuine vulnerability, but wary of emotional manipulation. They recognize that healthy vulnerability develops organically alongside trust, not as a shortcut to intimacy or as a shield against accountability. This red flag matters because relationships built on authentic emotional sharing thrive, while those built on strategic vulnerability often become emotionally draining or manipulative over time. Red flag number 7, competence undermining. The seventh and final red flag is competence undermining. Subtle ways someone might make you question your abilities, judgment, or perception of reality. Sigma females are especially sensitive to this red flag because they value their independence and self-sufficiency. They've worked hard to develop their skills and trust their judgment, so they notice when someone subtly chips away at their confidence. This isn't about obvious criticism or put-downs. It's more nuanced, explaining things you already know, often called mansplaining. Taking over tasks you're perfectly capable of handling to help you. Making small corrections to things you say or do in front of others. Suggesting you're overreacting when you express concerns. Framing your successes as luck rather than skill or hard work. What makes this red flag subtle is that each instance seems minor and might even be framed as helpful or caring. I'm just looking out for you, or I want things to be perfect for you, are common justifications. Sigma females catch this early because they recognize that true support enhances your confidence rather than diminishing it. They understand that someone who truly respects your capabilities will acknowledge your expertise and support your autonomy. This red flag is particularly important because over time, this pattern can erode your confidence and independence, making you increasingly reliant on someone else's validation and approval. A healthy relationship should expand your sense of self, not contract it. So there you have it, 7 subtle red flags that Sigma females tend to notice early in relationships. Value inconsistency, emotional camouflage, selective accountability, contextual respect, boundary testing, strategic vulnerability, and competence undermining. Now, it's important to remember that nobody's perfect. We all have moments where we might display some of these behaviors. The key is to look for patterns over time, not isolated incidents. The goal isn't to become hyper-vigilant or suspicious. Instead, it's about developing your perception and trusting your intuition when something feels off. It's about valuing yourself enough to pay attention to these subtle signals before investing deeply in a relationship. As Sigma females know, your peace and independence are precious. Learning to recognize these red flags isn't about being judgmental. It's about protecting your energy and ensuring you only invest in connections that truly enhance your life. I hope these insights help you navigate your relationships with more confidence and clarity. If you found this valuable, please give the video a thumbs up, share it with someone who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe for more content on building healthy, fulfilling relationships. What are some subtle red flags you've noticed in your own experiences? Share in the comments below. Your insight might really help someone else in this community. Thanks for watching, and